As we begin day 12 of 28 days of hope, we are growing because hope can increase. Hope is available. God gives abundant hope. We're doing this together. Great job making it this far. If you missed day 11, it's a really significant day, so check that out. There's really an exhortation to go public with our faith, and we're going to see these cities transformed like we never have before. The best is yet to come. And when that vision is shared, a lot of people say, but I'm hurting and I'm struggling. And in day 12 right now, we're going to talk about some hope shifts and receiving God's healing. This is the story of a paralytic. This is a man who's been sick for 38 years. If you've had a long-term chronic condition, and I know what it's like to take 10 years to fully recover, and then some things never recovered, but listen, there's no timetable where if God hasn't done it yet, that doesn't mean he won't do it. In 38 years, a lot of people would write God off, say, nope, the window's over. It's never going to happen. But healing happens on God's timing in God's terms. Jesus shows up with hope. Jesus is always full of hope. Jesus has hope when people don't have hope. And Jesus tells this man to go into the pool and the water's stirring. Now, there's probably some reluctance. I mean, first of all, who's going to help the man into the pool? But then also, he's just thinking 38 years. Sometimes our view of God is not sufficient. There's an old book, Your God is Too Small. And if you see something that looks like a mountain God can't move, it could be that your faith is too small. There are other times where we have faith, but God simply says no. This side of heaven, we won't have healing. There's mystery in terms of when God heals and how God heals. Jesus does it in a wide range of options and experiences, including spitting on the ground, rubbing mud onto eyes so they can now see. He works in different ways with healing. There's some mystery when and how God heals, but there's also clarity to trust God. In this process of healing that can be physical, that can be mental, emotional, relational, it can also be spiritual. God works on many levels at the same time. And God tells this man that it's time to get in the water. Listen to God. God is going to bring healing. It's because of his goodness. And he invites us to go deeper. He's inviting this man to literally go deeper in his faith. And he wants us to taste and see how good he truly is. Bring your scars, bring your pain today. Bring your areas of life where you need healing. Bring them forth, give them to the Lord. Listen closely to Jesus for the healing he wants to bring and the way he's going to do it. God might use a person, a song, a Bible verse. God might use a physician, medication, a counselor, a pastor, a conversation. God heals in so many different ways. The important part is to do whatever Jesus tells you to do. I love the story of Jesus turning water into wine. And there's a line from Mary, his mother, at the wedding in Cana in Galilee, where she says to the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. And so that's what they do. They get these ceremonial jars that kind of represent religion and rituals and rules. And Jesus takes those ceremonial jars with their water and fills them with wine, which represents his great joy. There's great joy. There's great hope when we do whatever Jesus wants us to do. If you love God, you're going to obey his commands. It was a step of faith for this man who's been hurting for 38 years to go into the water. There's a stirring in the water. It's time to respond to God, God's direction, and receive the healing from Jesus. It's God's goodness that he heals. God doesn't have to heal. It's his grace, his mercy. Ultimately in heaven, we're going to have resurrected bodies. There's going to be full healing. No more sickness, no more pain. Sometimes when we're suffering, we need to know these light momentary troubles. These are going to pass, but there's an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. That's God's perspective. We can have hope because we see the big picture, but we also have hope because of God's presence and power in the moment right now. And God makes it clear that these blessings, that all healing comes from him. Do you know anytime there's healing in your life, any good thing in your life, it comes from God. So make sure to continue to thank God. Thank God before the healing comes. I remember in my process of healing, I developed a gritty gratitude. That's the habit. That's what I called it, a hope habit. 10 things every day I would thank God for. Before my physical healing, and I didn't see it yet, I was thanking God 10 times a day. I would write it down because I was focused on what I didn't have. I was being consumed with the loss in the morning. But when I started to give gratitude to God, started to give thanks to God, I regained God's perspective. And then over time, God started to touch my body and raise me up. And that pain that I went through, it really became a fuel and it forged a new purpose and passion in my life. C.S. Lewis said, pain is like a megaphone that rouses a deaf world. Sometimes we're not listening to God until there's pain. And when there's pain, that pain drives us to God. We pour out our heart to God. We receive God's hope. This man receives Jesus's hope, and now he's healed. He can stand. He can give a testimony. He can share his story. What's your story of healing? How has Jesus brought hope in your life, and he's brought healing? And have you shared it with other people? As this man starts to share, there's religious leaders who don't like it. They're skeptical. There was a healing on the Sabbath. This violates their traditions. Not everyone's going to celebrate your healing. Not everyone's going to agree with you that God healed you. But don't let that silence you. Find your voice and find your story. I challenge you today, if you haven't done it before, take some time and write down during these 28 minutes today, how has God healed you? When has God healed you physically? How has God healed you relationally, emotionally, mental renewal of the mind, spiritual healing? Celebrate what God has done in your life. Your story is significant. Your story is going to inspire people. Your story is going to remind people of God's goodness. As you give God glory, people are going to turn to God through your story of healing. You're an instrument of healing. And just as God has healed you, God's going to use that story to bring healing and encouragement to more people. Hope is not only taught, hope is caught. This man is filled with hope. It's the hope of Jesus. And he doesn't even know that much about Jesus. He just encountered Jesus for the first time. You don't have to go to seminary. You don't have to read the whole Bible. Start sharing your story about Jesus. Your story is going to change many lives. And it's a story of healing. So as you receive today, know that our God is the healer. Jesus is the one who touches our lives, changes our lives. And it's our joy to tell everyone else the difference Jesus makes and how our Savior is good and he's a healer.